My name is Norma Magomo, and I'm currently a full-time MBA student at the University of Bath. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and for the past 5 years, I was living and working in South Africa before I came onto the MBA program. Before I came on to the MBA, I was working as the lead for the quality control department in an investment compliance reporting consultancy. So basically what I was doing is providing oversight of the end-to-end reporting process for our clients. It was a very fast-paced environment, and there was a lot to learn every day about different financial instruments and different fund types as well. So I really enjoyed my time in that role. I have this firm belief that people only grow when and if they choose to take on new challenges. So I kind of felt like I needed a new challenge. I needed to experience the culture and the people outside Africa. I needed exposure to sort of like a first world country. So I decided to take on a new challenge by applying for an international MBA here in the UK. I had already wanted to do an MBA for the longest time, since 2019, but I guess it was just a matter of time as to when I would decide to apply for one. So for me, it was more of wanting to get more exposure, wanting to meet people that are from different ethnic and professional backgrounds, which is something that I hadn't been exposed to before. I had always been around people who look and think like me and possibly have the same opinions and experience that I have had. So I really wanted that chance to get to meet people from different walks of life as well. I always thought that being quiet or reserved is respectful, based from how I was raised, based in the communities that I grew up. Basically in African culture, the more reserved you are, the more respectful you are sort of perceived to be. The MBA and my fellow cohort actually have challenged me to be able to speak out and vocalize my ideas, which is something that I hadn't been exposed to before. So seeing people from other countries being able to speak out in class, contribute to lectures, it was challenging for me at first, but I think it was a good lesson for me to be able to vocalize my ideas. It also taught me that actually my opinion matters, and I might add value to other people by saying what's on my mind than keeping quiet and keeping it in. So I think that has been one of the greatest challenges, but also one of the greatest value adds to me, in that I'm now able to vocalize my ideas more than I was able to do previously before going on to the cohort. Mostly in the corporate space, I would say it's based on seniority. I'll give you an example for when I started my position at the company that I was previously working for before coming onto the MBA. I joined as an intern, and the culture in that organization was that junior staff didn't really have a voice. So in that context, it was really based on how senior you are. The more senior you are, the more suitable it is for you to speak out your ideas. But in a general context, where I come from, Zimbabwe is a very patriarchal society. So I think the aspect of gender also comes into play, because back home, men tend to have a louder voice than women. Women are taught to be reserved and to be quiet in family meetings and the like. So depending on the context, it might be part gender, sometimes it's seniority. So it just really depends on the context. I am currently on a project with Lloyds Banking Group here in the UK. This is part of the multi-suite project that I spoke of earlier, and this is the final and biggest part of the project. So I am working on a project with Lloyds Banking Group as a strategy consultant, and we are basically trying to find a balance between cost cutting and maintaining good customer delivery or customer experience. We see that right now in the UK, we're heading towards an inflationary period, if you can call it, and many companies are seeking to reduce their cost base. And some of those ways that companies use to reduce their costs might actually affect the quality of services that they offer to their clients. So we're just trying to research and find ways that Lloyd's can actually roll out its cost reduction program, but at the same time maintain or even improve the quality of services that they're offering to their clients. So it's a really exciting project. It has been challenging. A lot of research has gone into it, but I find that even though it's challenging, I've managed to learn more about areas that I didn't know of. Before, I only looked at the financial sector in zeros and ones, in numbers. To me, it was really all about the money and how money flows in business and the like. It was all numbers and data driven. But there are so many things that I have learned on the MBA that helped me see the people, for example, in the financial service sector. So we did a module recently on managing people, and that just really opened up my mind to the other aspects that can come into play in the financial services industry that is not necessarily money. So I think it opened up my mind to the other aspects of financial services. Apart from the money, there are the people, there are other issues that affect the financial services that are not necessarily money or investment related. So I think I have a broader perspective of business in general now compared to what I had in the beginning. Part of my experience, I was a community-based banker, or what is called a rural banker. I discovered is not that common in the first world country because you guys are more developed, but it's basically a banker that stays within the community that they're serving. And at that time, I was stationed in a rural community where we were trying to improve the quality of life through financial inclusion. So people in the rural areas in Zimbabwe, geographically speaking, don't have access to financial service institutions or banks. So we decided to take the services to them. And through that experience, I noticed that one of the biggest challenge of promoting financial inclusion is actually financial literacy or the lack thereof. So banks or financial institutions need to be ready to train and educate people on the importance of the products that they're going to sell to that community. How these products better their lives or improve their quality of life actually matters. So you'll find that most people in that community didn't know what a bank account is, for example, and you need to start breaking it down for them to understand the importance of having a bank account. Otherwise, financial inclusion actually will not happen if people don't know the importance of financial institutions or financial education in their lives. So I think the first step and the biggest challenge is the lack of financial literacy in some communities. The second part, I would say, is the lack of documentation. So some of the communities we engaged with, you would find that someone is probably 40, but they do not have a national ID card, which means they do not have access to financial services. So part of that is also empowering communities by making sure that they have the necessary documentation that they need to be able to access financial services. And the last thing I would say is social inequalities. Like I explained earlier, in Africa, it tends to be patriarchal societies. So women are a bit behind in a lot of areas, and one of those areas is actually financial inclusion. So if there could be programs that can actually empower the unrepresented communities in the various communities that we serve, I think this will help to improve financial inclusion. I guess the way I interact with people is different now, based on my interactions with various people from various backgrounds. I guess I now have a different perspective of how to approach different communities. Of course, in my experience, I have only ever worked with Zimbabwean people, but I guess now I'm more able to extend, solving problems in different communities that are not necessarily Zimbabwean. A good example is India. India has a lot of rural communities, and I believe from my interactions with my fellow cohort who are from India has actually enabled me to understand their culture more, understand their way of thinking more, understand how their communities are set up, for me to be able to infiltrate their communities and extend solutions for their communities. So I think in that regard, I've been able to apply the aspect of cultural context. I guess we can call it cultural intelligence. I think that's a very important thing for someone like me who is passionate about underserved communities, because I think I won't only be limited to African or Zimbabwean communities, but rather any community in the world that actually needs help in a way. Yeah. Yes, that's strategy. Previously, my role required me to be a problem solver, right? But I don't think without having done strategy, I'll be able to solve problems in an organized or logical manner. The way I approach problem solving now, after having done the strategy module, is completely different. The way I frame the problem itself is actually completely different from what I used to do. I just used to look at a problem on a surface level and then think of, what's the best way that I can solve this problem. But strategy has really taught me to frame the problem well, go deeper from the surface and find out what is the actual problem, because sometimes problems look like what they're not. So you need to dig deeper to actually see what the root of this problem is. And I feel like that has been a very useful skill for me. Even in my consultancy projects, I apply this even in my personal life, to be fair. I plan to stay in the UK. I think one of the reasons I moved here in the beginning is for me to get some form of international exposure, and that includes post-MBA experience as well. I think it would add much more value to me if I managed to stay and have some experience in a more developed financial market such as the UK than it would be for me to head straight back to Zimbabwe. Not to say there's anything wrong with Zimbabwe, but I just honestly am of the perspective that first world countries tend to have more developed financial markets or capital markets. So I think it would be of my best interest to stay and get some experience before I decide to head back. I want to stay in regulation, but I guess now it's for a different reason. I want to go into regulatory strategy. So it's basically helping businesses navigate regulation and how they can best position themselves in markets, right? The reason why I want to do regulatory strategy now is Zimbabwe's regulations are not sound. So you find that we have had financial institutions fail. We have had the economy fail so many times. So I feel if I am able to get experience in regulation, I would be able to actually go and do something for the greater good. I had my most rewarding moment in my career when I was working as a role banker. I felt like I was doing something that is bigger than me and that is just beyond my career. I could tangibly see people's lives getting changed. And so this is something that I want to do in the bigger scheme of things. And I really feel that a career in regulation will help me do this, not only for my community, but for my country as a whole, and for the economy of Zimbabwe as well. So I really want to get into regulation. I can't put a timeline to it. So I don't know how long I'm going to stay in the UK, or how long I'm going to get the necessary experience that I need. But the goal is always to actually go back home. I love home, even though a home is not the best place for my career at the moment. But my long-term goal is actually for me to go back home and make a difference there, for people that are going to come after me to have the opportunities that I didn't have at home. It's nice being, having to live in different countries, but the heart is always home, as they say. So yes, I would love to go back home. I don't know if that's going to be in the near future or a little bit further away, but the goal for me is to go back home and make a change for people that are going to come after me.